In the year 1878, the population of New York City was about 1.2 million. So there was a gentleman, Ben Hogan, who was visiting New York City from the area of Pennsylvania where I grew up, rather rural, and he was trying to get away. He had had a number of affairs, they hadn't gone well, and so he was just looking to clear his mind a little. As he was walking down the street, he had one of those experiences that many of us have. He saw the back of this woman. It was a woman who he had this affair with that he'd wanted to see again. And so, overcome with excitement that somehow in New York he found her, he goes up, he grabs her arm and says, "Kate, I knew I'd find..." And she turns around, it's not her. It's that embarrassment that many of us have in those situations. And he stammers out, "I'm sorry. I thought you were someone else." And she turns to him and says, "That's all right, Mr. Hogan. I understand." And she walks away. As he goes back to his hotel room that night, a couple of things happen. He can't get her face out of his head. And then he asks, "How does she know my name? How did I randomly grab some woman who happened to know my name?" So he really becomes consumed, and he keeps walking back to where he saw her for about 3 months. And he sees her at a distance, and she's actually, the doors are open in New York. There's not air conditioning in 1878. And she's really inside of a church, of which he refuses to go into. But on August 22nd of 1878, he tries something a little different. He goes a half hour earlier than he had. And he just starts looking, and he hears from behind him, "I've noticed you every evening watching from a distance. Would you consider joining us inside, Mr. Hogan?" He says to her, "I didn't come here to go inside. I came here to see you. How is it that you know my name?" And she said, "I've been traveling through the oil towns of Pennsylvania for several years. I first saw you in Pit Hole and Parker's Landing in Petrolia, and I've been praying for your soul ever since. Have you decided to give your heart to Jesus Christ?" And very sneeringly, "No, I have not. I came here to see you." So from that point, he really desires, how can I get to know this woman? The reason she knew him, she was much like our sisters that we have here in our parish, who have lay missionaries. She was a lay missionary who had been traveling through Western Pennsylvania. In the 1860s, 70s, and 80s, there was an oil rush going on. And if you want to understand what our culture was like then, it was really like the Wild West. And Ben Hogan, in particular, was living a pretty wicked life. He had opened brothels. He had led, by his own admission, over 200 women into prostitution. He had done embezzlement. Anything that you can think of, Ben had done. But one morning, while he was there, it was a Sunday morning, he woke up, for whatever reason, unexplained, not much different than all of you. He had this thought, I should go to church. He had never been, and he was living a wicked life. But this is what happened when he went to church that day. Ben Hogan attended church once during his residence in Parker Landing. It made such big news that the local newspapers put it in the next day. But this is what they wrote. The local newspapers declared it a pity that the steeple had not fallen on him and crushed him to death. Finding so little encouragement in his attempt to follow the path of piety, Ben never bothered to go to church again. I want us to consider this gospel passage that we read today. So often when we read on Lazarus and the rich man, it's often preached really in the goods of this world. That those who are rich, not helping the poor, and are we willing to give them up? But as Father said last week, Jesus had a little twist in his parable, and I thought if Jesus can have a little twist, Deacon Dave could have a little twist today. So I want you to consider the greatest wealth that all of you have. Beyond any shadow of a doubt, those of us who are in this church this day, the greatest wealth you have is your Catholic faith. There is nothing more valuable than this which Christ has given you. And in a little while, Father is going to pray over bread and wine. And it's going to become the body and blood of Jesus Christ. And when we read about the rich man having sumptuous food at his table that he will not share with Lazarus, how incredible the food that you and I have. The body and blood of Christ. So I ask, have you been handing on the faith to those in your life begging for it? Have you talked to your neighbors next door and told them where you go on Sunday morning? Have you shared with those who come into your coffee shop that you love Jesus Christ? And they should as well. When you write articles, do you share that the most important part is that you are of the Catholic faith? If someone asks you on a date, do you say to them, okay, you can go to the Latin Mass with me, and if you make it through that, maybe I'll marry you? It may sound funny, but we have Tyler and Bryson Pearl at Mass this morning. She did that as a young Catholic woman at WVU. There's a young man who wanted to go out with her, and she said, I want him to see everything that I am. I want him to see my faith. And you may say, Deacon Dave, that's a little too much. You don't know where I work. You don't know my family. Okay, then I want you to consider the words of Mary Stockman on the streets of New York City. How did you know my name? And her answer, I have been praying for your soul for years. So for those in your family who are not practicing their faith, for those that you struggle with at work, for your neighbors who don't really like you, if they came and knocked on your door today, would you be able to say to them, I have been praying for your soul for years. I have been praying for your soul for years. Because if we understood the incredible gift of our Catholic faith, what else could we say to them except that I've been praying for your soul? So let me go back to Ben Hogan for a few moments. So he tells her that he has no desire to go to church with her. He has no desire to meet Jesus Christ. But he would like to take her for a walk. You probably can't understand, Ben Hogan had never asked a lady to go for a walk, ever. He'd asked for a lot of other things, but never that. And she said yes. And she started walking with him every afternoon and sharing her faith. After about 8 months of this, he had the courage to ask her, "Will you marry me?" And she did. And he had still not had a conversion. But Mary Stockman saw something in him. And then, one Sunday evening, as they were on a walk, she said, "Will you please come in this evening?" And much like he had done many years before, he finally walked into the church. But something different happened. The preacher got up and said what a sinner he had been, how he himself had been an alcoholic, how he had wasted his life, but that Christ had redeemed him. Ben Hogan has a conversion. Somehow he finally realizes this gift at the age of 37, that Christ had died on the cross for him. And as he does so, he goes out and he says to his wife, Mary, "I need to tell you about some things from my past life. I've been many things in life: a gambler, a pirate. I operated many brothels, saloons. I've counterfeited money. I've been a kidnapper." She says, "I know all of your misdeeds, Ben, from the days in the oil region when I started to pray for you." And she says to him, "No, you don't. There's worse. When I was a kid living in New York City, a shopkeeper stole my father's life savings. My gang of friends and I murdered him." Mary's face saddened. "I can accept anything you may have done as being part of the old life that you left behind. God has forgiven you, and so do I. I don't think you understand. I also killed other men, mostly in self-defense. It's okay, Ben. God forgives all." And he says to her simply, "Thank you." He goes to bed that night and sleeps soundly for about the first time in his life. He wakes up the next morning. He still has a bunch of jewelry and things from his life that he had led. There had been a point at one time on a 5-day binge when in $25, he blew through $650,000 frolicking with nothing to show for it. So he sold what was the equivalent of $340,000, gave all of it to the church, and turned his life over to Christ. But then what he recognized is he was overwhelmed with the forgiveness that God had given him. What he recognized is his life was so wicked, and at so many moments he should have died and didn't. And he recognized that it was only God's mercy that had kept him alive. So as he started to pray, he asked, what could he do for God? And he had this courageous thought: I will go back to Western Pennsylvania, to all those towns where I opened brothels, where I led people into sin, and I stole their souls for Satan. And I will tell them the truth about what I did, and I will tell them that Christ has changed my life. He went back. When he first started, every place he spoke was packed. But his speaking tour turned into a flop. His old companions showed him nothing but hatred and scorn. Even the ministers in those towns refused to believe in his conversion and that it was genuine. And they blacklisted his meetings. When he had sold them vice when he had led them into sin, they flocked to him. When he offered them virtue, when he was teaching the 10 Commandments, when he was talking about how he was dead and he had come to life, they had no interest whatsoever. So he would leave and go to Chicago. He would spend the next 38 years of his life. When you read the deeds of his first 37, they're really, at some point, they're just too much. How bad it was. The last 38 years of his life, there's no record of any immoral acts. Sure, like us, venial sins, but of really dedicating everything. He would open what we would know today as a homeless shelter, where he would feed men, house them. He would lead AA meetings and try to leave them out of a life of addiction because he had a chance. A few weeks ago, Charlie Kirk was murdered. It was recorded on tape and millions saw it. Not long afterwards, about 10 days after his death, there was a memorial service, and his wife, Erica Kirk, a practicing Catholic, got up and said something very simple. Our Savior, Jesus Christ, said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." That young man, I forgive him. I forgive him because it was what Christ did, and it's what Charlie would do. So I ask us a deeper question than my first one. For all those who come here this day, who have the incredible wealth of the Catholic faith, are you willing to say, I forgive you? Most of us have not had someone in our family murdered. Some may have. But oftentimes, people don't say hi to us. They cut us off in traffic. Our spouse doesn't say, I love you, or thank you for cleaning the house, or making dinner. Our kids forget to call us from college, and our heart becomes embittered. And we don't say, I forgive you, and we don't say, I love you. And even worse, there's times where they come to us in our lives, people who have offended us, who have the courage to say, I am sorry. And we say nothing. The gift of our Catholic faith. Christ forgives us in the sacrament. But do we forgive those in our lives, even for small offenses? At the end of his life, Ben Hogan was asked, how did your life change? And it was very simple. Mary Stockman at the time, she prayed for my soul. She forgave me. And then she introduced me to Jesus Christ.